Yeah, I'm going to give you a brief update on what transpired over the weekend and what we anticipate is going to transpire coming up in the future. So I'm going to share my screen if I can make that happen. Briefly, we want to give an update from our perspective at Poudre Fire Authority, and then Lieutenant Byrne will talk about how we get into recovery and where we go from here. So as you all know, for 2 months, we've been dealing with literally a black cloud over our city that's been smoke. It's been over 2 months now, and this thing has gone well over 205,000 acres now after some burning today. So it has been a very devastating fire as far as the impact on our community. And it's at times, especially this last weekend, it's been frightening. Here's to give you a little thing about what really caused a lot of that smoke and the flames that could be seen from both in Fort Collins and especially in Loveland along Bobcat Ridge over the weekend. Is we had a spot fire that developed up on a drive called Otter Drive in Buckskin Heights that is at the top of the ridge that's over Redstone Canyon. Redstone Canyon is part of the Poudre Fire Authority's jurisdiction. It's in the Poudre Valley Fire Protection District. We have a volunteer station there of very dedicated volunteers. They've worked tirelessly over the years to do fire mitigation. There's been 3 fires since 2011 that have impacted that: the Crystal Mountain Fire, the High Park Fire, and now the Cameron Peak Fire. If you look at where the arrow just showed up, that's the spot fire. That's the Redstone Canyon area. If you follow that line on the eastern edge of that, though, the firefighting goals and objectives on Saturday were basically 3 things: protect structures, protect homes, and some homes in that area were lost. But to protect homes, to protect critical infrastructure, which if you can follow the little arrow in this ridge where Horsetooth Mountain is, people have probably noticed radio towers, and we were protecting that critical infrastructure for the city of Fort Collins was of the highest priority. And then if you follow that eastern line, that is County Road 25E, and our objective was to keep fire, as you can see, and that was successful, was to keep fire on the western edge of 25E to prevent fire from coming down across 38E into the Milner Mountain and Muley Park area, which could possibly tie in with the southwest edge of the main body of fire. And so those became the objectives for Saturday. It was windy. There were 70-mile-an-hour winds. Some of you may, and I don't have that in my presentation, but some of the firefighting that was going on in the winds was pretty incredible. And it was a very dangerous situation for our firefighters. But this suppression action here was what we were taking action on to prevent fire from coming into our communities along the Front Ranges. If we could hold it into the canyon, and also to keep it from coming further into in stretches south of Redstone Canyon and even in the Big Thompson Canyon. I added this slide. This is a slide from satellite imagery about 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's different right now. It's cooled down a lot, but if you look at the red spots, that's where the heat is. And I highlight this to show you that we do have heat in Redstone Canyon, but the heat along this is the fire front, and along this southern edge, there was a lot of aircraft activity today, a lot of burning operations. At one point, the fire got up and ran a little bit. We had to back, or they had to back some of their firefighters out, but they had a lot of suppression activity going on there. Also in this spot up in this northwest corner, we had a lot of aircraft working in that area to make sure that we get that cooled, and we're hoping to have what we would call a line. We're hoping to have containment of that spot fire in the next couple of days. Now that we'll talk a little bit about some of that difficulty with that in the next couple of days, but we're very pleased with what's happened in there today. We've done a lot of mopping up. That means digging up stumps that are smoldering and are hot to prevent any kind of ember from being blown out. This area along this red area here is what you're hearing about with Storm Mountain. The Glen Haven area is in those areas that were hot this afternoon. If you looked at this map now, this satellite imagery map, that heat is not in there, but it will be back, I anticipate, tomorrow. But they did have a good day of getting a lot of aircraft on the fire. Just to show you briefly what the conditions were like at the top of of the ridge over Redstone Canyon and 70-mile-an-hour winds. This was very consistent fire behavior that our firefighters were encountering. So it was a very eventful day for our firefighters, our men and women that were up there working to suppress this thing, to try to, the problem is there's a fire, and our solution to that problem was to try to suppress that fire. So what we did for planning, so we as we just told you, we planned to attack the fire and keep it in its boundaries, keep the boundaries along that county line road, or that county road on 25E in Redstone Canyon, to keep it on the west side of that. That was, to not necessarily we were going to put the fire out, but we were taking everything we could, all actions we could, to keep it on that side, while also protecting those towers and protecting homes. This involved a lot of digging of line. It involved putting what we call putting fire on the ground. It's actually a backburn, or fighting fire with fire, as it used to be called. A lot of that was done to help protect that road, and I'm very happy that our firefighters were able to do that, along with working with firefighters from the incident management team. Were able to do that. And then in the city, what we learned in High Park, and what we did over the weekend, is the fire apparatus on the western boundaries of Fort Collins in the city, and to make sure that we're not getting any potential for any kind of embers or anything spread into the city. We put them on patrol, and they'll patrol the roads around Horsetooth and also down at the bottom of that to make sure that there's no activity, and watching that ridge between Redstone Canyon and Horsetooth to see if there's any activity in that area. So we stood that up, as we did during the High Park as well. So that was the plan for Saturday. And then Saturday night, I can tell you that about 8 o'clock at night, when the humidity hit 40%, we had a lot of really aggressive fire activity to that point, and then it was just kind of like a light switch got thrown, and the fire activity died down. And we had that cool day on Sunday. And a cool day yesterday to help us get a lot of line and a lot of aircraft in there to do a lot of firefighting. So what the future holds is, we talked about where that fire was, what we were trying to do with that spot fire in Redstone Canyon. So the future holds completing a line around that, and as I mentioned earlier, is getting line established along that southern boundary of the main body of fire. And the incident management team has been very aggressive on that. They did another call today through the state emergency management to what they call for surge engines, and those are 72-hour commitments from departments around the state, and those engines are on the way, and I think they will be stood up. They were supposed to report by this evening, and they'll be stood up and on the fire tomorrow. So that's a great way they can get additional resources to fight that. So the future also, as you know, maybe you've looked at your weather app on your phone. The future it shows that we are going to cool off, with the possibility of some moisture. I'm hoping for 1 or 2 feet of snow, and more would not be bad at all on that fire, whatever we need, because it's going to take a good wetting, what we refer to as a wetting storm, meaning a couple of days of moisture, good, solid, continuous moisture, to be able to suppress this thing entirely. So we still have a lot of potential for fire growth. Part of that future also means we're having tomorrow into Thursday will be another mountain wave event, meaning there'll be high winds on the fire. So that's why we want to get that line buttoned up. They're working on it, finishing up tonight. They're doing some burning operations up in the Buckhorn. So there's still a lot of work being done 24 hours a day to be able to hold the fire where we want it over the next 24 hours. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Lieutenant Byrne to talk about the impacts on the city of Fort Collins.
I'm going to give you a quick update on what we've been doing and some of the impacts that we've had. And I'll start right out with the obvious. You see from that picture there that Bobcat Ridge was significantly impacted by the fire. I was actually out there yesterday, and despite the fact that there was efforts made to try to minimize that impact and the structures were saved, Bobcat Ridge was hit, and it was hit hard. And so natural areas in that whole group under John Stokes, once they're able to, they'll work with our recovery team to figure out what it looks like to try to put that back to accessibility and make it as much as possible that area that it was. But again, there's no sugarcoating that. It was significant. When we talk about watershed, obviously there's two things. You've got an update last week about the Poudre River section, and the good news there is that the fire has significantly died down up in there. Matter of fact, we're very hopeful that later on this week we're going to see some access restored to some of the citizens. A lot of the infrastructure is being put back in place. Power, those types of things are hopefully going to be restored. CDOT's going to do some cleanup work this week. And so with the activity up there and the ability to go in and start working on that, including doing water samples, all that stuff is taking place right now. The Big Thompson watershed now potentially being impacted by this new finger of the fire. That obviously is going to come into play in recovery efforts in that it's going to bring new partners to the table. It's not going to slow down the work we've already done in preparing. Matter of fact, it's going to help our regional partners kind of have a runway to jump onto to continue to push that work forward. So we know we're going to have new partners at the table for that. However, we also have other regional fires. We've got the troublesome fire out in Grand County. We've got the fire down in Boulder. And again, that's going to bring more requests for resources to the table and assistance, both at the state and federal level. And there's already efforts being made to combine that and make that a statewide effort. And so a lot of info to come on that. But again, utilities is got a great team in place, and they're doing a lot of work on that front. We want to talk about real quickly, you know that we've had a lot of effort in supporting the fire, and we truly believe, and we know you do too, that supporting the fire efforts of our regional partners is good for the region, it's good for the partners, but it's also good for our community. It benefits our community that we've been giving them that support. And so you've seen significant impact. My staff has probably got over 500 hours of dedicated time to the fire right now, filling significant leadership and management roles. We're also the main coordinator for utilities access, government access to some of the fire sites, and been doing a lot of the credentialing for the county. Police, FCPS has got about 300 hours so far of dedicated staff time to supporting, and about another 200 hours so far on the books, and it's potentially with more to come. So again, all depending on the fire. And then others, we talked about it real quickly, utilities, parks, streets, natural areas, they jumped out last week to help us stand up that firefighting camp that you see at Hughes Stadium. If you've been out there, there's a little bit of a city that's standing up there because CSU gave us that site to use, and we used our resources to get it going. Natural areas has been very heavily involved. They actually had a brush truck out there with crew helping the county as the fire came up on Bobcat Ridge. So there's a lot of resources in play and continuing to be in play and always assessing. I am personally several times a week in the operations meeting at the ranch with the IMT team, gathering information, figuring out what the impacts are going to be on the community, and then coordinating with Chief DeMint and staff. So a lot of things in play. We're hopeful. Tom's hoping for a foot or two of snow. I'm right there with him.